My name is Natalie Hayes, and if you looked at me today, you'd think I had it all together. From the outside, people see a woman who's built a steady career, a cozy home for her 2 kids, and a life that feels secure. I keep my lipstick fresh, my blouse pressed, and my smile polite. But the truth? There are cracks beneath the surface that only I can feel. This morning, as sunlight spilled through the glass panes of my office window, I took a slow sip of coffee. That rich, dark roast I rely on to keep me grounded. My phone buzzed against the mahogany desk, pulling me out of the moment. A notification. A forwarded picture. There she was, my sister, Madison, radiant in her bridal gown, holding a champagne flute. The words "can't wait to celebrate the big day" splashed across the caption. My stomach tightened. Because no matter how much I tried to brace myself, seeing her face, seeing that wedding, always hit me like a punch. You'd think, given how close Madison and I once were, I'd be standing right beside her on that big day. Maybe even helping her into that ridiculous mermaid dress she always dreamed about. But no. She made sure I knew my place. She made sure my kids and I weren't invited. Imagine, the sister I grew up protecting, the one I once whispered secrets to under the covers, turned into a bridezilla who erased me from her perfect little fairy tale. And now, the past I tried so hard to bury was knocking at my door again. Growing up, Madison and I were inseparable. We were only 2 years apart, and to me, she was more than just a sister. She was my best friend, my partner in late-night whispered dreams. We shared everything: nail polish, secret crushes, even the same diary with 2 locks on it, because we couldn't stand the idea of leaving each other out. I still remember one summer evening, lying on the porch swing of our old Kentucky home, fireflies glowing around us. Madison leaned her head against my shoulder and said, "Nat, promise me we'll always be there for each other, no matter what." I promised. And at the time I believed it. But somewhere along the way, Madison changed. Maybe it was the pressure of college sororities, or the allure of the picture-perfect social media life she chased so hard. She became obsessed with appearances, with status, with how things looked rather than how they felt. And the breaking point came the day she told me, flat, unapologetic, that my kids and I wouldn't be welcome at her wedding. I can still see her face, perfectly powdered, lips glossed, eyes rolling as she said it like it was nothing. "Nat, it's just you and the kids don't really fit the aesthetic I'm going for. I need this day to be perfect." I laughed at first because I thought she was joking. My hands trembled as I clutched my coffee mug, trying to steady myself. But when I looked at her, I realized she meant it. The words sank in like ice water down my spine. My throat tightened, my vision blurred. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to remind her of all the nights I'd stayed up comforting her after breakups, or how I defended her when Dad got too harsh. Instead, I just stood there, frozen, with my heart cracking in a way I knew would never quite heal. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed, my kids asleep in the next room, tears slipping down my cheeks. My grandmother's locket, the one she gave me before she passed, lay warm in my palm. She told me once, "Natalie, you can't control how others treat you, but you can always choose how you rise from it." That night, I made a choice. If Madison didn't see my worth, if my family couldn't stand by me and my children, then I would stand for us myself. And it was in that quiet, tear-streaked moment that I decided I wouldn't just survive her rejection. I'd build something stronger, something untouchable. The morning after Madison's rejection, I woke up with swollen eyes and a pounding headache. My kids, Ethan and Sophie, padded into the kitchen in their pajamas, their hair a mess, their smiles still pure. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I couldn't let them see me broken. I couldn't let them think that their mother's worth depended on an invitation. So, I put on a brave face, braided Sophie's hair, packed Ethan's backpack, and kissed them both as if nothing had happened. Inside, though, I was determined. I needed to create a new life, one where no one's approval could decide my value. At first, it was survival mode. I worked part-time at a local diner, scraping tips to pay rent. Nights were harder, dishes stacked in the sink, bills piling on the counter, the quiet loneliness pressing in once the kids were asleep. But it was in those late hours that I started researching, scrolling through articles, watching tutorials, scribbling notes in a worn spiral notebook. I'd always loved design, the way colors and spaces could tell a story. So I taught myself everything I could about interior design and digital branding. I studied after midnight, whispering motivational quotes to myself while the rest of the world slept. Then came my first break. A neighbor, Mrs. Lang, asked if I could help redesign her small boutique shop on a shoestring budget. I poured everything into it, sketching layouts, repainting walls, repurposing old furniture. When the project was finished, her shop didn't just look new, it felt alive. She hugged me with tears in her eyes and handed me my first real check. It wasn't much, but to me it felt like a golden ticket. Word spread. Slowly, one project turned into 2, then 5. I designed a cafe downtown that became the talk of the town. I remember walking by one night, seeing strangers sipping lattes under the warm lights I had strung across the ceiling and whispering, This is mine." Still, I kept my success quiet. On social media, I posted modest updates, the kids playing in the park, a cozy dinner at home. Never the big contracts, never the growing bank account. Part of me wanted to scream it from the rooftops, to prove to Madison I wasn't the failure she imagined. But a bigger part of me wanted to protect this new world I was building. And then, life surprised me again. One of my clients, an established architect named Richard Collins, saw something in me I hadn't yet fully claimed for myself. After a project review, he pulled me aside. "Natalie, you have an eye most people spend years trying to develop. Don't play small. Build your own firm." At first, I laughed it off. Me, a single mom with a messy kitchen and a pile of overdue bills running a firm? But his words planted a seed. So I took the risk. With Richard's guidance and a loan I fought tooth and nail to secure, I opened Hayes Design Studio. My tiny office had secondhand chairs and chipped paint, but it was mine. And when my kids came in after school, dropping their backpacks on the floor and curling up in the corner with crayons, I felt like I'd built a sanctuary for all 3 of us. That was the beginning of the life nobody, not even Madison, ever expected me to have. The first time Madison saw me again wasn't by choice. It was 2 years after her wedding, a wedding I only knew about through filtered Instagram posts and whispers from distant cousins. By then, Hayes Design Studio had become more than a gamble. It was a thriving business. I had 5 employees, a waiting list of clients, and a reputation that was starting to stretch beyond our small town. The call came from my aunt out of the blue. "Natalie, sweetie, Madison's in town, and we're all meeting at the new art center tonight. You should come." I almost said no. My instinct was to keep my distance, to protect the peace I had worked so hard to build. But something in me knew this was the moment I'd been preparing for, not to prove myself to them, but to finally stop hiding. So I went. The art center was one of my firm's proudest projects. High ceilings arched above a lobby bathed in warm amber light, textured walls drew the eye, and curated local art filled the space. Every detail was mine. My design. My story woven into brick, paint, and light. When I walked in, heads turned. Not because of my dress, a simple navy wrap with a pearl clasp, but because of the aura that comes when a woman finally knows her own worth. Madison's eyes widened as she spotted me. For a moment, she looked just like the girl I grew up with, surprised, maybe even glad. Then her smile faltered as realization set in. Aunt Clara chimed in, breaking the silence. "Isn't this place stunning?" Natalie's firm designed the entire building. The air shifted. My sister blinked, her perfect composure cracking. "You did this?" she whispered, almost as if she couldn't process it. I let the silence sit, savoring the weight of it. My father, who once worried I'd never amount to much without a man, scanned the space with disbelief. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Even my cousins, the ones who used to pity me, looked around in awe. Finally, I spoke. My voice was calm, even, but it carried. "Yes, this is one of our projects." My team poured their heart into it. Madison asked, her voice thin. I nodded. Hayes Design Studio. I own it. We have 3 ongoing contracts in New York, another in Chicago. And this, I gestured around the glowing lobby. This was my dream turned into reality. The silence was so thick, I could hear my own heartbeat. I watched as Madison's face shifted through disbelief, confusion, and something dangerously close to shame. For so long, she had dismissed me as the sister who didn't fit the aesthetic. And yet here she was, standing in the middle of a masterpiece that bore my fingerprints. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ethan and Sophie had come along too, sitting proudly on one of the benches I designed. Sophie swung her legs back and forth. Ethan beamed like he was about to burst. That, more than anything, was my victory. Anything was my victory. Madison finally spoke, her voice brittle. I didn't realize you were doing all this. I smiled softly. No, you didn't. Because you never asked. Her cheeks flushed, her manicured hand tightening around her clutch. For the first time in years, the power between us had shifted. Not because I wanted revenge, but because the truth was undeniable, written into every stone and canvas around her. For the first time, Madison had to see me as I truly was. Not the sister she left behind. Not the single mom she pitied. But the woman who had risen, quietly, powerfully, on her own terms. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't need her validation anymore. She needed mine. The gathering moved from polite chatter into something heavier. Madison avoided my eyes at first, sipping her champagne too quickly, but I could feel her discomfort radiating across the room. My parents lingered near me, trying to mask their pride with neutral expressions, as though they weren't the same people who once worried I'd never get far. Finally, Madison broke the silence. Nat, I don't even know what to say. I guess I owe you an apology. Her words were careful, like each one weighed more than she could carry. I inhaled slowly, smoothing the fabric of my wrap dress. This was the moment, the one I used to fantasize about back when I cried myself to sleep. But standing here now, I didn't feel like gloating. I felt steady. Strong. You do owe me one, I said softly but firmly. But more than that, you owe Ethan and Sophie. You erased them like they weren't part of me, like they weren't worthy of standing by your side. That doesn't just vanish with an apology. Her eyes flicked to my kids. Sophie clutched my hand. Ethan sat taller, his little chin tilted with pride. Madison swallowed hard. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. If you want a relationship with me, with us, it won't be on the old terms. I won't chase your approval, and I won't let my kids feel small to make your world look perfect. She nodded quickly, too quickly. But I raised a hand, stopping her. No. Listen first. If you want to rebuild this, you'll start by showing up. For them, not just for me. No more staged perfection. No more exclusions. If they invite you to a school play or a soccer game, you go. You clap the loudest. That's how you earn back trust. Madison's lip trembled. For once, her glossy confidence slipped. I turned to my parents next. And you? My father stiffened. My mother blinked rapidly. I love you both, but for years, you watched me struggle and said nothing. You let Madison's vanity outweigh fairness. If you want to be part of my life now, you respect what I've built. You respect my children. No more backhanded comments, no more doubts about whether I could make it. I already did. My father looked down, ashamed. My mother whispered, "You're right." I softened, just slightly. I'm not cutting anyone off. I don't believe in revenge. But I believe in boundaries. And I'm done bending until I break. Silence hung over the group, thick and heavy. But this time, it wasn't painful. It was freeing. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the little sister begging to be included. I was the woman setting the terms. I looked at Madison one last time. You called me the one who didn't fit your aesthetic. Maybe you were right. I don't fit into small boxes anymore. I build entire worlds. She blinked back tears, and for the first time in years, I saw something real flicker in her expression. Humility. Maybe even regret. And in that moment, I knew the balance had shifted. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected began to happen. Madison started showing up. Not in grand gestures, not in glittering gowns or picture-perfect smiles, but in small, real ways. She came to Sophie's school recital, sitting quietly in the third row, clapping with tears in her eyes when Sophie curtsied. She brought cupcakes to Ethan's soccer game, cheering louder than I'd ever heard her before. It wasn't redemption overnight. It was awkward at times, stilted, even painful, but it was honest. And maybe that was enough to start with. My parents softened too. My dad came by the studio one afternoon, running his fingers along the polished oak counters and murmuring, "I underestimated you, Nat." It wasn't the apology of a poet, but it was the kind of truth I'd waited years to hear. Late one night, after tucking the kids into bed, I sat at my desk, holding my grandmother's locket in my palm. The gold was worn smooth now, warm from the heat of my skin. I remembered her voice as clearly as if she were sitting beside me. "Natalie, you can't control how others treat you, but you can always choose how you rise from it." I smiled, because I had risen, higher than I ever imagined. Madison may never fully undo the hurt of that rejection, and my family may never erase the years of silence. But I had built something no one could take from me. Not a wedding invitation, not approval, not validation. My children had watched me turn pain into power, and that was the legacy I wanted to leave. One afternoon, as sunlight poured across the office floor, Sophie curled up in my chair and asked, "Mom, are you glad Aunt Madison comes around now?" I looked at her, at Ethan sketching on the corner of my blueprint, and I realized the truth. I'm glad we don't need her to feel complete. But yes, I'm glad she's learning who we really are. Because that was the difference now. We weren't waiting to be invited into someone else's perfect story. We had written our own. I closed the locket with a soft click, feeling its weight settle in my palm like a seal of closure. And as I stood there, watching the city lights flicker outside my window, one truth rang clear, strong enough to echo through every chapter of my life. I used to believe my worth depended on being invited. Now I know, I don't need an invitation to belong.